I lost my son in a boating accident when he was 23. The pain nearly killed me, but I thought my wife and I would grieve together, heal together. Instead, she abandoned me just weeks after the funeral, leaving me completely alone with my devastation. For 6 years, I existed in a fog of depression and rage. When I finally gathered the courage to travel again to try living instead of just surviving, I saw someone who made my world collapse. My heart stopped beating. Before I tell you my true story, comment below where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I want to know how far this story travels, because what happened to me could happen to anyone anywhere in the world. 4:15 in the morning, March 18th, 2018. The phone shattered the silence of our Atlanta home like a gunshot. Mr. Foster, this is Captain Rodriguez from the Carnival Destiny. Your son Nick is missing. My world stopped. Samantha sat up beside me, instantly alert. Missing. The word hung in the air like smoke. Last seen on deck 7 around midnight. We found his phone by the railing. Phone by the railing. In the middle of the Atlantic. I'd been in construction for 30 years. I knew what that meant. By 6 that morning, we were on a plane to Miami. Samantha cried the entire flight. I couldn't. That's not how I'm built. Instead, I felt something cold settling in my chest like concrete around my heart. The helicopter ride to the ship was a nightmare. Blue waters stretching endlessly. How do you find one person in all that vastness? Captain Rodriguez met us at the helipad. Kind eyes, bad news written on his face. He led us to deck 7, showed us Nick's cracked phone. Last photo was 11:30, a selfie. He looked happy. Happy. My son had been happy an hour before he vanished. Security footage showed Nick walking alone at 11:45, hands in his pockets, looking like any young man on vacation. Then nothing. The cameras had blind spots on deck 7, they explained. We've had dive teams since dawn, Rodriguez said. Coast Guard helicopters search boats. But I could see it in his eyes. After 6 hours in the Atlantic, you don't find someone, you recover them. Samantha collapsed against my chest. I held her, staring at that endless blue water, feeling something die inside me. By noon, they called off the search. The flight back to Atlanta lasted forever. Samantha cried herself to sleep. I stared out the window, watching America pass beneath us, trying to figure out how to bury a child with no body to bury. The funeral home understood. They'd handled cases like this before. Accidents at sea, missing persons' families, needing closure without remains. They provided a beautiful mahogany casket, empty but beautiful. March 22nd, 2018. 47 people gathered at Greenwood Cemetery. I stood in my best suit, the one I'd worn to Nick's college graduation, staring at polished wood that held nothing but memories. I didn't cry at the funeral. Samantha did enough crying for both of us. I felt that concrete around my heart getting harder, colder. The preacher talked about Nick's life, his art, his dreams. I barely heard him. They lowered that empty box into Georgia soil while I stood there like a statue. People shook my hand, said they were sorry for my loss, promised Nick was in a better place. I nodded and thanked them, but inside I was screaming. After everyone left, I stood alone beside that fresh grave. The headstone was simple. Nicholas James Foster, beloved son, taken too soon. 23 years old. Gone. I stared at that empty coffin's final resting place, and something inside me died with it. The father I'd been, the man who believed the world made sense. The guy who thought bad things happened to other people's families. All of it buried 6 feet under Georgia dirt. I buried my son that day, but I had no idea I was burying a lie. 6 weeks after laying my son to rest, I found my wife packing suitcases in our bedroom. May 8th, 2018. I'd come home from another sleepless night at the office, losing myself in blueprints, just to avoid the silence that had swallowed our house. That's when I saw them 2 black suitcases on our bed, half filled with Samantha's clothes. What's going on? She didn't look up. I can't breathe in this house anymore, Phillip. We can get through this, I said. People lose children and survive. She finally looked at me. The blue eyes that used to light up when I walked in were cold. I'm not surviving. I'm dying in here. Every room reminds me of him. He was my son, too. I know. She folded another sweater with mechanical calm. But I can't be your grief counselor and deal with my own pain. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching the woman I'd loved for 3 years pack our life away like bargain bin leftovers. You're all I have left of him. She paused, and for a moment I thought I'd reached her. Then she turned, and her face held something harder than sadness. That's the problem. I'm not a piece of Nick. I'm not a memorial to your son. I'm suffocating here, so we'll move. Sell the house. Start over. It's not the house. It's us. This whole life doesn't make sense anymore. I dropped to my knees on the bedroom carpet, a 55-year-old man, begging his wife not to abandon him. Please don't leave me alone with this. For a second I saw the woman who used to laugh at my terrible jokes. Then it vanished. I already married the wrong man once, she said quietly. I won't make that mistake twice. Wrong man. Those words hit harder than Nick's death. She lifted both suitcases, walked to the door, and turned back once. My lawyer will send the papers. The front door closed at 4:37 that afternoon. I stared at the clock for 6 hours, waiting for her to come back, waiting for her to realize she'd made a mistake. She never did. 2 weeks later, the divorce papers arrived. Samantha waived all claims to the house savings, everything. She wanted out fast. My lawyer had never seen someone so eager to sever a marriage. Most divorces drag on, he said. This woman once gone like the house is on fire. Maybe it was. Stephen found me 3 weeks later sitting in the empty living room, staring at the wall where Samantha's family photos used to hang. My older brother looked me over and shook his head. You look like hell, Phil. Feel worse? He sat in Samantha's chair. When's the last time you ate? I couldn't remember. She left like she had somewhere important to be, I said. Like staying one more day would kill her. Stephen was quiet for a long time. That's what bothers you, isn't it? Not that she left how fast she left. He was right. The speed, the efficiency. Like she'd already rehearsed her escape long before Nick disappeared. Normal people don't recover from grief that fast, Stephen said. Normal people don't pack up 3 years of marriage into 2 suitcases and walk away without looking back. I stared at the empty wall. So what does that make her? I don't know. But it makes me wonder what else we don't know about Samantha Pierce. What kind of woman abandons her husband after losing a child? I would spend the next 6 years trying to answer that question. Men grieve differently. We don't collapse in grocery aisles or break down at random moments. We build walls brick by brick until the pain can't reach us. That's what I did for 6 years after Samantha walked out. I turned our house into a mausoleum. Nick's room stayed exactly as he'd left it. Art supplies on his desk, textbooks in a corner. His jacket hanging on the chair as if he might walk in at any moment. Stephen came by often during that first year bringing groceries I didn't touch. He never pushed, just appeared steady and patient. You're disappearing, Phil, he told me one night in late 2018. He was right. I lost 30 pounds without trying. Slept in fragments and buried myself in 12-hour shifts, where machinery noise drowned the silence in my head. By 2019, Stephen had reached his limit. You're seeing someone, he said. Dr. Emily Watson. First appointment's Thursday. I didn't argue. Doctor? Watson, a small woman with kind eyes and gray hair, let me sit silently through 3 sessions. When I finally said, I'm not much of a talker, she replied, that's okay. But your silence is deafening. It took another year before I joined her grief support group. Thursday nights in a church basement, folding chairs in a circle bitter, coffee ate parents who had lost children to accidents, cancer, or overdoses. That's where I met Susan Taylor, whose daughter had been killed by a drunk driver. She understood the particular hell of losing an adult child. The worst part isn't the crying, she told me. It's when the crying stops and you realize you're just empty. Empty exactly how I felt. Susan became an anchor, not romantic, just present. By 2022, I was working part-time again. Dr. Watson told me I was changing. You're quieter, sadder, but you're here. For the first time in years, I felt even slightly present. Susan suggested I take a trip. You haven't left Atlanta in 4 years. Maybe you need to breathe somewhere else. Stephen loved the idea. Puerto Rico. Warm weather, good food, no memories. I almost refused. Leaving Nick's room felt like abandonment. But Susan said gently, he's not in that room, Philip. He's here tapping her chest. He goes wherever you go. In November 2023, I packed clothes I hadn't worn in years. Not excitement, but something close to it stirred in me. Stephen watched from the doorway. You sure, he asked. I looked around the house that had become my prison. Maybe it's time to breathe somewhere else? He nodded. You deserve to feel okay again. The flight to San Juan felt unreal. I gripped the armrest while Stephen pretended not to notice. I hadn't flown since the nightmare trip to identify Nick. This is good, he said as we descended. This is what moving forward looks like. I wasn't sure I believed in moving forward, but maybe I could learn. I thought I was finally beginning to live again. I didn't know my real nightmare was only beginning. Yet even as the island came into view, a part of me trembled with the sense that healing was never linear. I told myself that simply stepping onto new soil was victory enough. But beneath that hope, something darker stirred, a warning I didn't yet understand. November 21st, 2023. I was browsing handmade crafts in Old San Juan's marketplace when I saw a ghost. The morning had started perfectly. Stephen and I had spent 3 days exploring the island. For the first time in years, I'd felt something close to peace. I was examining a hand-carved chess set when something caught my eye. A young man at the fruit stand, maybe 20 feet away, dark hair, broad shoulders, the way he shifted his weight while thinking. My heart stopped. It was the stance. That particular way of standing I'd watched develop from childhood to adulthood. The same posture from Little League games and high school graduations. I moved closer, telling myself I was seeing things. But the closer I got, the more certain I became. My dead son was buying mangoes. He looked older, 29 instead of 23. His face had filled out loss, that boyish softness. But it was Nick, the birthmark behind his left ear, the scar on his chin from falling off his bike at age 7. That's when I noticed the woman beside him. Blonde hair, petite frame, laughing at something a small boy was saying. The boy held her hand, maybe 4 years old. A little girl sat in a stroller. The woman turned slightly and my world tilted. Samantha, still beautiful, still confident, standing next to my supposedly dead son like any other family doing weekend shopping. I watched frozen as Nick put his arm around her waist, leaned down to kiss the top of her head. The gesture was intimate, familiar, comfortable. This wasn't some chance encounter. This was a couple. A family. The little boy tugged on Nick's shirt, pointing at something. Nick smiled, picked up the child, spun him around. The boy's laughter cut through the marketplace noise like a knife through my chest. This was real. A real family. Happy, healthy, whole. And I was the stranger watching from 20 feet away. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't process what I was seeing. My son, who I'd buried 6 years ago, was buying fruit with my ex-wife and children I'd never met. They finished shopping, loaded bags into a stroller, and started walking toward the parking area. I followed at a distance, staying behind other shoppers, my heart hammering against my ribs. I watched them load groceries into an old pickup truck, watched Nick buckle the children into car seats with the practiced efficiency of an experienced father. Watched Samantha climb into the passenger seat like she belonged there. When the truck pulled out, I flagged down a taxi. "Follow that truck," I told the driver. "Don't lose it." The driver looked at me like I was crazy, but the $50 I threw at him changed his mind. We drove for 20 minutes into the hills outside San Juan. Small towns, modest neighborhoods, winding roads that led away from the tourist areas. The truck finally parked outside a small yellow house at the end of a dirt road. I told the driver to stop a block away and watched as my son and my ex-wife unloaded groceries, like any other family coming home from weekend shopping. Watched the children run up to the front porch. Watched Nick unlock the door, and they all disappeared inside. A house, a home, a life built on my suffering. I stood on that street for an hour watching lights turn on inside, watching shadows move past windows. A normal Saturday evening for a family that wasn't supposed to exist. The taxi driver finally asked, "You want me to wait?" I stared at that yellow house, at the life I'd never known about. "No," I said, "I'm good." But I wasn't good. I was the furthest thing from good. That night I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling and planned what I would say to the son I'd buried 6 years ago. November 27th, 2023. I'd been watching that yellow house since dawn. At 7:30, Samantha emerged dressed for work. She kissed Nick goodbye on the porch, ruffled the little boy's hair, and drove away. Now it was just Nick and the children. At 8:15, I crossed the street and knocked on that yellow door 3 times. Steady. Firm. Nick opened it, coffee mug in hand. For a heartbeat, we stared at each other. 6 years collapsed into nothing. His face drained of color. The mug slipped shattered on the tile floor. "Dad," his voice barely a whisper. Don't call me that." Behind him, I saw the children. The boy playing with cars, the girl coloring. They looked up at the breaking ceramic, curious. "Lucas, Emma," Nick called, voice shaking. "Go to your room. Close the door." The boys started to protest, but something in Nick's tone made him obey. He took his sister's hand, led her down the hallway. Now it was just us, father and son. 6 years between us. I stepped inside without invitation. Nick backed away, stumbling over broken ceramic. "Please, I can explain." 6 years! My voice was controlled but shaking. 6 years I screamed at an empty grave. I wanted to come back, but you were too busy playing house with my wife. Nick's face crumpled. She's not your wife anymore. She was when you started sleeping with her. Nick couldn't meet my eyes. How old were you when it started? Long silence. 20. 20. You were barely out of college. I know how it sounds. It sounds like she groomed you. Nick sat heavily on the couch, put his head in his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were red. She made me feel special, like I mattered, like I was more than just your son. You were always more than just my son. I didn't feel that way. After Mom died after you remarried, I felt invisible. Samantha saw me, really saw me. She listened when I talked about art, about dreams. She treated me like a man, not a kid. You were a kid. I was 23 when the plan happened. I thought I was making my own choice. What plan? Nick's hands shook. The cruise, the whole thing. Her idea from the beginning. To fake your death. He nodded, tears streaming. She said we could start over. Be together without judgment. She said you'd move on, that you were strong, that you'd find someone else. The words came out flat. Nick's face went white. I didn't know. She told you I'd be fine. Yes. And you believed her. I was young and stupid and thought she was my soulmate. Nick wiped his eyes. I thought it was love, Dad. I didn't know she was using me until it was too late. By then I had the kids, and I couldn't destroy their lives too. I looked around the small house. Toys scattered, children's drawings on the refrigerator. A life built on lies, but still a life. Those children, they're my grandchildren. Nick nodded. Lucas is 4. Emma just turned 2. My grandchildren. Kids I'd never met, never held, never known existed. The weight of it hit me. Not just the betrayal, not just the lies, but the stolen years. Birthdays I'd missed. First steps I'd never seen. Bedtime stories I'd never read. Dad, I'm so sorry. I wanted to tell you so many times, but... That's when I heard Samantha's car pulling into the driveway. The front door opened. Samantha walked in, still beautiful, still confident. She stopped when she saw me, face draining of color, but trying to maintain composure. Phillip, what are you doing here? I'd been waiting for this moment for 6 years. You destroyed everything. She glanced at Nick on the couch, reading the situation. The broken coffee mug, the tension, the way Nick couldn't meet her eyes. You need to leave. This doesn't concern you anymore. Doesn't concern me you faked my son's death. We're happy here. You should move on. Move on, like 6 years of hell was something you just got over. You groomed him. He was barely out of college. Samantha's mask slipped, then snapped back. Nick pursued me. I tried to stop it. Samantha, stop lying, Nick said from the couch. She whirled on him. You knew exactly what you were doing. You wanted this life. I was 20 years old. You were 35 and married to my father. You were an adult who made adult choices. I was a kid who just lost his mother figure and you took advantage? The truth hung in the air. Samantha looked between us, calculating, still trying to find an angle. You let me bury an empty coffin. I reached into my jacket, pulled out the gun I'd bought that morning. Samantha's eyes went wide, all confidence gone. Put that down. Think about the children. I've thought about nothing else for 6 years. Those children are my grandchildren. Kids I never got to meet because of your lies. Phillip, please. You destroyed my family. You let me suffer while you played house with my son. Nick stood up, moving between us. Dad, don't. She's not worth it. But I wasn't looking at Nick. I was looking at the woman who'd stolen 6 years of my life. You know what the worst part is? Not that you left me. Not that you manipulated Nick. It's that you let me grieve a lie. You let me stand at an empty grave and scream at nothing. I'm sorry, she whispered, but there was no sincerity. Just fear. No, you're sorry you got caught. From the bedroom, the children started crying. They could sense something wrong. Those kids don't deserve this, Nick said. Whatever you do, don't let them see it. He was right. Lucas and Emma were innocent. Get them out of the house. Get them out, now. Nick hesitated, then ran toward the bedroom. I heard him talking softly to the children, their small voices asking what was wrong. Samantha used the distraction to lunge for the door. The gun went off. The sound filled the small house, deafening. Samantha stumbled, clutched her shoulder blood spreading across her white blouse. She hit the wall and slid down, gasping. But she was breathing. From the bedroom came screaming, Nick's voice trying to calm them, trying to shield them from what had just happened. I stood there, gun smoking in my hand, looking down at the woman who'd destroyed my life. She was bleeding, scared, broken, but alive. You're bleeding? I said. But you're breathing? That's more than I gave my son for 6 years. I could have killed her. Should have, maybe. But those children didn't need to lose another parent, even one who'd built their lives on lies. I set the gun on the table, pulled out my phone, dialed 911. "I need an ambulance," I said when they answered. "Woman's been shot. She's alive but bleeding." Samantha looked up at me from the floor, confusion mixing with pain. "What?" she whispered. "Because I'm not you," I said. "I don't destroy families." She was bleeding on the floor, clutching her shoulder, but she was still breathing. The children were screaming, and I realized what I'd become. The sirens were getting louder. In 5 minutes, my life would change forever. I'd crossed a line I could never uncross. The front door burst open. 3 Puerto Rico police officers' guns drawn, shouting commands. "Hands up, step away from the weapon." I raised my hands slowly. "I shot her. She's alive. The ambulance should be here soon." They moved in fast, professional. One secured the gun, another cuffed me. The third checked on Samantha, conscious but pale, pressing a towel against her shoulder. "Sir, what happened here?" "I shot my ex-wife. She faked my son's death 6 years ago. I found them living here." The officer exchanged glances with his partner. "Your son's death? Nick Foster. Supposedly died on a cruise ship in 2018, but he's been here the whole time." Nick emerged from the bedroom, both children clinging to his legs. "It's true? Everything he's saying is true." At the police station, Detective Martinez sat across from me, recording device on the table. "Tell me what happened, Mr. Foster." So I did. All of it. The cruise. The empty coffin. Samantha leaving. 6 years of grief. Finding them in the marketplace. Martinez listened, taking notes. When I finished, he leaned back. "This is quite a story. You understand how it sounds. Check the records. Nick Foster reported dead, March 18th, 2018. Martinez left, came back an hour later with a different expression. "We ran the prints from the house. The man claiming to be your son. His fingerprints match Nick Foster, supposedly deceased. So you believe me now? We're investigating. We've contacted Atlanta PD, the Coast Guard, the FBI. They found Carlos Rodriguez 2 days later. The former cruise employee was working at a Miami marina. When they showed him Nick's photo, he broke down and confessed everything. The money. The plan. How he'd helped Nick disappear. Stephen flew in from Atlanta, hired the best lawyer he could find. This is temporary insanity. 6 years of psychological torture. Any jury will understand. But understanding and acquitting were different things. I'd shot someone regardless of circumstances. Nick visited me in jail. We sat separated by reinforced glass, talking through phones. I'm sorry, Dad, for all of it. I know you are. The kids ask about you. Lucas wants to know if Grandpa Phillip is coming back. Grandpa Phillip, the title I'd never known I had. What do you tell them? That you're a good man who got hurt very badly, and sometimes good people do things they wouldn't normally do when they're hurt. Samantha's been arrested too. Fraud, conspiracy, accessory to faking a death. Her lawyer says she could get 5 years. And you, they're treating me as a victim, coerced into conspiracy under manipulation. He paused. I'm taking the kids back to Atlanta. Stephen says we can stay with him until you get out. Until I get out. Yeah. The charges came down a week later. Assault with a deadly weapon, but with mitigating circumstances. The prosecutor acknowledged the extraordinary situation. Samantha faced multiple felony counts. My lawyer was optimistic. The evidence of manipulation is overwhelming. The fake death, the grooming of a young man, the psychological torture you endured. This isn't a typical assault case. What's the best case scenario? Probation, maybe some jail time. The jury will see you as a victim too. And worst case, 5 years, but I don't think it'll come to that. The detective looked at me differently now, not like a criminal, but like a father who'd endured something unimaginable. May 15th, 2024. The day 12 strangers would decide if I was a hero or a criminal. Justice isn't always black and white. I sat in the Puerto Rico courthouse, wearing my only suit, watching reporters file in. The story had made national news. Father shoots wife who fakes son's death. The facts are simple, the prosecutor said in his opening. Phillip Foster shot an unarmed woman. Whatever his pain, we cannot allow people to take justice into their own hands. My lawyer looked at the jury. This isn't vigilante justice. This is a father who endured 6 years of psychological torture, who buried an empty coffin, who grieved a lie. Nick took the stand on day 2. He looked older, more serious. Tell us about your relationship with Samantha Pierce. Nick's voice was steady but quiet. It started when I was 20. She made me feel special, like I mattered. She said my father didn't understand me, that he saw me as a child. And you believed her. I was 20 and still grieving my mother's death. When Samantha paid attention to me, it felt like love. The prosecutor cross-examined aggressively. You were an adult, Mr. Foster. You made choices. I was manipulated by someone 15 years older than me, someone in a position of power in my family. But you faked your death. Nick's voice cracked. I thought we'd be happy. I thought my father would move on. I was 23 and stupid. Dr. Sarah Williams, a forensic psychologist, explained the impact of losing a child. Mr. Foster experienced ambiguous loss. His son was gone, but no body, no closure. This creates psychological torture. And discovering his son was alive, the shock would be overwhelming. 6 years of grief suddenly revealed is unnecessary. The term is temporary insanity. Samantha testified in her own defense arm in a sling, composed, articulate, unrepentant. I fell in love with Nick. Yes, he was young, but he pursued me. And the fake death? Nick's idea. He wanted us together without family complications. My lawyer destroyed her on cross-examination. Bank records showing transfers. Phone records proving she'd planned everything. You groomed a grieving young man, didn't you? I loved him. You used him. You let his father suffer for 6 years while you played house. The jury deliberated 8 hours. Guilty of assault with mitigating circumstances. Not attempted murder, just assault with recognition that extraordinary circumstances had driven an ordinary man to an extraordinary act. The judge looked at me over his glasses. Mr. Foster, while we cannot condone vigilante justice, we understand the psychological torture you endured. 3 years probation. 3 years probation. Samantha got 5 years in federal prison. As I walked out, reporters shouting questions, Stephen waiting by his car, I thought about what Nick had said. Sometimes, good people do things they wouldn't normally do when they're hurt. But walking out of that courtroom, one question remained. Was justice really served? 1 year later, I still ask myself the same question. Every morning, was I right to pull that trigger? Some questions don't have easy answers. I live in a small house now, 3 blocks from Stephen's place in Atlanta. Sold the old house with all its ghosts, bought something simple. 2 bedrooms, a small yard, enough space for my grandchildren to visit. That's what I am now, a grandfather, the title I never knew I had. Lucas is 5. Emma is 3. They call me Grandpa Phillip, and when they say it, something in my chest loosens. Something that's been tight for 7 years finally relaxes. Grandpa, will you push me on the swing? Lucas asked last Saturday at the park. That's all I ever wanted to be, I told Stephen later. Just Grandpa. Nick moved back to Atlanta 6 months ago. Found a job at an art supply store, enrolled the kids in a good school, started family therapy. We meet every Sunday at Stephen's house for dinner. Awkward at first, but getting easier. I'm proud of the man you've become, I told him last month. Despite everything. I'm sorry it took me so long to come home, he said. You were a kid who got manipulated by someone who should have protected you. That's not your fault. We're building trust slowly. He tells me about the kids' school, their friends, their dreams. I tell him about my job at the hardware store, my volunteer work at the Veterans Center. Normal grandfather-son conversations, the kind I thought I'd never have. Emma draws me pictures, stick figures of our family, Daddy Nick, Grandpa Phillip, Uncle Stephen, and 2 little kids holding hands. She doesn't draw Samantha. Doesn't ask about her either. She doesn't remember much, Nick explains. Lucas asks sometimes, but less and less. Samantha is in federal prison in North Carolina, 2 years into her 5-year sentence. She's written me letters. I don't read them. Nick says she's asked to see the children. He's refused. I don't hate her anymore. I told Dr. Watson during one of our monthly sessions. I pity her. That's growth, Phillip. She destroyed so many lives, mine, Nick's, even her own. And for what? Some fantasy about starting over. Some people are just broken beyond repair. Maybe, or maybe she's exactly what she always was, someone who takes what she wants without caring who gets hurt. I work part-time now. Enough to pay bills, not enough to avoid living. Stephen says I'm different. Quieter but present. More solid somehow. You went through hell and came out the other side, he told me. That changes a person. It does. I'm not the same man who got that phone call 7 years ago. I'm not the man who stood at an empty grave. I'm not even the man who pulled that trigger. I'm someone who learned that family isn't perfect, but it's worth fighting for. Someone who discovered that the hardest person to forgive is often yourself. Someone who knows that sometimes good people do terrible things when they're pushed beyond their limits. Would I do it again? Pull that trigger. Shoot the woman who destroyed my family. To protect Nick and those children. To stop someone from manipulating and hurting the people I love. Yes, I would do it again, but I hope I never have to. Last Sunday, Lucas climbed into my lap after dinner. "Grandpa Philip, do you love us?" "More than anything in the world," I told him. "Good," he said, and fell asleep against my chest. That's what comes after: love, family, second chances. That's enough. Looking back at my true story, I realized God had been testing me in ways I never imagined. 7 years ago, I thought I'd lost everything. Today, I understand that sometimes we have to walk through hell to find heaven on the other side. Don't be like me. Don't let anger consume 6 years of your life. Don't wait for tragedy to teach you what really matters. These grandpa stories I share with Lucas and Emma always end the same way: family is everything, but revenge is nothing. When I tell my true story to other fathers, I always say this: if someone betrays your trust, don't take justice into your own hands. God sees everything, and He has His own way of making things right. I pulled that trigger because I forgot that vengeance belongs to the Lord, not to broken men like me. The lesson from my true story: love your children while you can. Hug them tight. Don't assume tomorrow is guaranteed. These grandpa stories I tell now are filled with hope, not hatred. Because God gave me a second chance I didn't deserve. If you're facing betrayal, if someone has destroyed your family, remember God's justice is perfect, even when ours isn't. Trust Him, not your anger. My story isn't just another true story about revenge. It's about redemption, about how God can heal even the deepest wounds if we let Him. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever felt betrayed by someone you trusted? Share your thoughts below. Your story might help someone else heal. If this touched your heart, please share it with others who need hope. Don't forget to subscribe for more real stories that show how God works through our darkest moments.